Binge audio. Non, c'est pas, non, je crois que...
My dear friends, every time we refuse to apologize, we choose to become activists. These words are not mine, but those of our very first guest of the cycle dedicated to being single, Shani Silver. I know how difficult the holiday season can be for someone who steps out even a tiny bit of the couple norm. So I thought the holiday season was the right time to discover Shani's work. Shani advocates for a single revolution. She advocates also for our lives to be full and joyful, regardless of our personal situation, and for us to get rid of the stigma of singleness. She is not well known yet in France, so it's an honor for me to introduce her to you. She changed my life, and she is one of the people who allowed me to build my own existence at my speed, with my head held high. So, my dearest friends, consider this episode my Christmas present.
Non mais laissez-moi parler, c'est vraiment insupportable. On peut plus rien dire. Vraiment, c'est n'importe quoi. On peut plus rien dire. Et la prochaine fois, ça sera quoi? On peut plus rien dire. Qu'est-ce que c'est que ça? On peut plus rien dire. On peut plus rien dire. On peut plus rien dire. On va le dire quand même.
So, my dear friends, we are very lucky today because we have a very special guest who is interrupting her holidays in Paris just for us. Welcome among us, dear Shani Silver. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Shani, I'm very happy to have you today here because your work changed my life, and I'm not saying this lightly. Shani Silver wrote a book which is called A Single Revolution, which is not translated yet in French, so if you're a publisher, please do what you need to do. And you host a podcast every week which is called A Single Serving. Your podcast is about reframing single life and getting rid of single shame. And I have to say, for me, it worked. So thank you very much, first of all.
You're very welcome. It's such a pleasure to hear that coming from you, especially. It's wonderful to hear.
So you explained in your book that your whole work started when one day you decided to stop feeling miserable and stop hating single life without having to find a boyfriend first. You said, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Did you say you managed to get out of this feeling?
I think the way that I was able to change my mindset, it wasn't like I woke up one day and snapped my fingers and it changed. It came after years and years and years of frustration and anger and confusion and exhaustion. The same thing that every single woman who's been trying to find someone for years and hasn't found them, that's what they feel. I was feeling very normal things for a single person to experience in modern dating culture. It was just that I had experienced them for so long and I was so frustrated and I couldn't, I have a hard time when effort is wasted. And back then I was still seeing it as wasted effort rather than as an education, which is how I see it now. But I was so frustrated. In my head, I was thinking, this can't be for nothing. All of this frustration and anger and sadness and really confusion, because imagine looking for an apartment for 10 years and not finding one. You would go insane. I was looking for a partner for 10 years and I couldn't find one. I was losing my mind and I didn't know why. Because love and relationships, it's not such a rare thing. It's actually very common. It happens to people every day, all the time. Everyone has this. Why can't I find it? And I knew I wasn't the only one. And I knew I didn't want to keep feeling this way. So I chose to feel something different. I chose to see things differently. And as soon as I made that choice, everything got better. And it got so good that I had to tell other people because I felt like I set myself free and I wanted to help other people feel better. Specifically, I wanted to help single women feel better.
Maybe just to explain for us a little bit, because here in France, the dating culture is a little bit different. It's changing. because of dating apps. So we somehow inherited a little bit more of the American way.
I'm sorry.
Yes, no, really, we are not thankful for that. Can you explain to us a little bit how the American dating culture is? I think we got it from movies and series, but what it's interesting for me is that it's very codified. Like, you have sex on the third date. You never talk. You're not exclusive until you say it. To me, it feels a little bit like a big job interview, but for romance. Like, explain to us. Yeah.
I mean, you have it pretty good. I think the joke is that many years ago, the structure was, how long do we date before we have sex? And now, modern American dating culture is, how long do we have sex before we date? And for me, that is very backwards. I cannot, casual sex is not something I can do anymore because I don't feel anything. It's not like it feels bad or I feel bad about myself. I have no shame about sex at all. But like having sex for no reason without feelings, it doesn't do anything for me. It's like, why am I here? It's kind of pointless. So like my sexual style doesn't fit into modern dating culture at all because I have no interest in the job interview, like you said. I don't like sitting down with a stranger that I've never met before and having 2 or 3 glasses of wine and then going home and wondering if I'm going to hear from them again, or texting them and never hearing back from them again. And then imagine doing that 50 times in a row. It's
a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. So I don't participate anymore. I stopped 3 years ago. I stopped doing this 3.5 years ago. I stopped doing this ridiculous dance. And they've been the best 3.5 years of my adult life because I'm free from that nonsense. We talk about the way that I see it is when I was participating in dating, there was a lot coming at me that was negative. And there was also a lot coming at me that was nothing. Because when you swipe and swipe and swipe and swipe forever and you never match with anyone, it's nothing. There's this void of feeling and a void of interaction. And I called it the bucket of nothing. It's like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Nothing is happening. Why am I doing this? So there's multiple forms of negativity and now they're gone. And I feel so much lighter and happier. And I think single women have the idea that if they stop dating, that's giving up. Or if they stop dating, they'll never find someone. But I always ask them, are you finding someone now? Is this working for you? There's a fear. Like, if I quit doing this, if I stop, I'll never find someone. And I think that's false. And a lot of my work operates on the premise that that is false because you don't have to date to meet someone. How many people met a million different ways, at work, through friends, at a party, on the train, literally any way possible. So there's no logic to, if I remove myself from a terrible dating culture, I'll never find someone, because you can meet someone literally any other way.
You have a very strong style of writing, which I love. And one of your catchphrases that really resonated with me the most was, dating apps turned women into free sex workers men can ghost. And I think that's everything. That's exactly that.
Yeah. The sex work aspect, the free sex work aspect to dating culture is a huge reason why I left it. Because first of all, I'm very in favor of the decriminalization of sex work in the U.S. because I think it's necessary. I don't like the way single women are made into a commodity. We are, it sounds very gross to talk about it in this way, but it's just sort of men can use whatever they want on dating apps, and they have no consequences. They don't have to have any sort of manners, or they don't have to have any sort of respect. And I want to be clear that women can do all of this too. Women can, and they do, participate in the bad dating behaviors as well. But I hear so seldom from men experiencing what single women experience. And I always want to honor what a single woman is experiencing in the a single straight woman is experiencing in the dating space, because I know intimately how bad it can be.
There is this sociologist, this American sociologist, who is famous when you get a little bit into the dating world. She's called Judith Duportail, and she argues that in our society, exists a new form of discrimination that we don't see yet, which is singleism. She says, like, single people are discriminated. It comes in very different forms. It can be like financially. It comes when you have to find a place, like couples and families are favorized. It comes with tiny little aspects of life. If you go on holidays with your friends, single people tend to have the worst room. It's what do you think about singleism?
I think it's a very real thing. I think there are going to be exceptions to it. For example, I think that I got the house that I live in now because I'm single. I think I was actually preferred over a couple because of noise. I make less noise. But yes, especially in terms of taxes and any sort of there are many financial advantages to being in a couple, many financial advantages. And I think that's by design. I think it's very capitalistic. I think it's very patriarchal. I think there is something about the idea of people in pairs making nice little families in their nice little house that makes people feel comfortable, that makes people feel like, okay, these people are not threatening. If you're in a family, you are not threatening. But a single woman alone, living happily on her own without the burden of constantly searching for a husband, that makes people nervous. A happy woman alone makes people nervous, and I don't know why.
I think it's also used politically, especially right now in the United States. The day we record this podcast is it's a few days after this very sad news that the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade, so that the abortion is no longer right nationally in the US. Correct me if I explain things wrong. But there is a congressman, and he's called Matt Gaetz, and he tweeted this thing. And I think it's horrible, but it summarizes everything. So there was a protest against the overrule of the Roe v. Wade, so a protest in favor of abortion a few weeks ago. And this man, he tweeted, listen to me, it's crazy. He tweeted, how many of the women rallying against overturning Roe are overeducated, underloved millennials who sadly return from protests to a lonely microwave dinner with their cats and no bubble matches? Overeducated, underloved millennials with no bumble match and a cat. This image is used as a political weapon against women. It's like a threat. Like, if you fight for your rights, this is who you will become. And saying that this is the worst thing that you can become, and overeducated, underloved. And I think this is why your work is very political too.
It's a very old argument. It is ancient. It is absolutely ancient, and it is a tool that is used by men to make women think the most important thing in their life is whether or not a boy likes me. That's what that's saying. First of all, I don't take anything that man says seriously, and I don't want to get like super political at all because it's obvious what's happening in the U.S. It's a nightmare. It's terrifying, and I have to go back there and live there in a few days, and it's heartbreaking. And it's not like I know that the discussion is about abortion, and really what it's about is bodily autonomy and the ability to do with your own female body what you want, and we no longer have that. So there are no words of comfort or any sanity that I can give to it, and there's no it will affect single women and married women equally. It will affect women of color more. It will affect it's just, I don't even know. It's still so new, and we're very much in shock and in a lot of pain about it. So it's difficult to talk about. Yeah. But what he's saying is a very, very old argument that is so old and so useless, so outdated, that it's now funny to me, which is why I can write about him and rip him apart in the piece that I wrote on Medium, because it's so easy. You make it so easy. Really, that's your argument. That's what you want to scare women with. Good things?
Yes.
All of that sounds good to me. Are you kidding me? Like a peaceful dinner at home with my cat, and my phone has no idiots on it that are going to ghost me in a week. Brilliant. This is brilliant.
You're so right. And the way that single women are still discriminated, what struck me and angered me so much was one guest on your podcast. She was a very sweet old lady, and she was explaining that she got sick at a point in her life, and the doctor just assumed she wouldn't want to be cured because she had no husband and no kids. He just assumed her life was worthless. It made, when I was listening to this, I was brushing my teeth and I was like, what? Can you tell us a bit more about this lady?
Of course. So Professor Joan Delfator was diagnosed with cancer, and when she went to the doctor, she wasn't getting proper care, proper treatment, because it was assumed that not only, like, you know, what does she have at home? Like, why would she want to live? But it was also assumed that she wouldn't have anyone to care for her. That was a huge part of it. The doctor didn't want to spend the effort and resources to help someone who had no help at home, and he assumed that because she wasn't married and had no children, that she had no help, when in reality, she has a thriving community and network of people that helped her and that helped her get well. And also, she, like, why do people think that we're, like, incapacitated? She also cared for herself, too. Yeah. But of course, as you get deeper and deeper into cancer treatment, you do need help, and you need people to take you to and from appointments and help at home if that's necessary. But more people than just a spouse can provide that. And the more she researched into it, the more she was seeing that spouses and children don't even bother to help anyway. So this myth around, oh, you have to have children, who will take care of you? The same people that actually take care of everyone else, people who are paid to do so. Or, if you're very lucky, a community of friends around you, neighbors, things like that. So she went to a different doctor, obviously. It's another moment of a very old way of thinking that is affecting single people in real life, because she had to go find a doctor that was like, no, why would I treat you less? That's not right.
It's so scary, but yeah, you're right. Like this idea that because you're not in a relationship after a certain age, you have nobody. Like, it's so still printed in so many people's brain.
It's very limiting. It's a very narrow perspective on life. It shows me that you only know of one way to think and one way to live and one way to exist. And the truth is so much bigger than we talk about, and so much bigger than we see, and so much bigger than we praise. We don't give any praise to a woman who has lived her entire life alone, who has paid all of her rent and bills and mortgage alone for a lifetime. She deserves to be celebrated. That is very difficult. But instead, we shame her as if that's a terrible thing to do, rather than a massive accomplishment. It's very backwards. It's very old. It's heartbreaking to me, because it makes women fear their future, when in reality, your future gets to look exactly as you want it to look. Any way you want it to look, that's what your future can be. But if the world does not praise multiple futures, multiple kinds of life, how would we ever know to pursue that? We might pursue something that we don't even want because we think we have to, because that's the only thing that society says is good.
In your book, you developed this very interesting concept, which is the prologue life. Mm-hmm. What is a prologue life?
A prologue life is waiting to do things until you have a partner. I can't travel, I don't have a partner. I can't buy a house, I don't have a partner. Even much smaller things, like I talk about having nice appliances in the kitchen, like a nice blender or a nice set of mixing bowls to cook with. I was using crap from college for years, into my 30s. It's so embarrassing, into my 30s, because I thought you have to wait until you get married to get nice things in your house. That's what I thought. That's what was taught to me. A prologue life is waiting for your life to start until you find a partner. And I had to put that in the book because I waited in a prologue life for way too long. Way too long. I wish I had snapped out of that at 25, 26. But it didn't happen until I was about, 32, 33, maybe later. I wasn't living fully because I didn't think I was allowed to.
You explained that you had this revelation. It's a very strong image. It's around the holidays, around Christmas. You're sitting in the car with your mother. Can you tell us?
You know how sometimes things pop into your head and you did not put them there? This was one of those moments where this thought came from the universe or something. I don't know where it came from. But I was sitting in the back of her car, and for the American holidays, we do a lot of shopping and running errands. And I was sitting in the back of my mom's car, like squished in between like food and like dry cleaning. And I was just sitting there, and this thought popped into
In the back seat?
In the back seat. In the back seat as like a 30-year-old. It was so bad. I just thought, like, you don't have to meet someone for your life to start. That it was very simple, but it was like one of the beginning moments of my career. And I had never thought that before. And as soon as that thought appeared, I was like, oh my God, you're right. This thought is right. I can just breathe. I can let go and relax and breathe, and I don't have to pretend like my life isn't real yet, because it's real right now. And that's when I started looking into things like traveling alone, and I'm traveling alone now. I love it. It's my favorite thing, especially to Paris. But it might not occur to other single women that they don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to wait for anything to do what you want or live how you want or be who you want. But we've been taught another story.
It makes me think of another important notion you develop in your book, which is agency, like the ability to create thing and do thing and act on your own and develop new skills. It's crazy how we taught that we don't have that much agency, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's patriarchy, I think, as well. That's the way that we want women to behave, the way we want women to be put in a nice little box, very neat and very easy to understand and non-threatening. And it's how we... I don't know if we still do it now. I'm sure we do. We should stop. It's how women are raised. It's how we raise little girls to think. Like, have you ever seen, like, small children? This makes me crazy. When someone asks a little girl, oh, do you have a boyfriend? She's 5.
Yeah.
Leave her alone.
Let her, like, run in the fields or whatever,
yes.
or play with snails. I don't know what will
Don't
little
put
girls
this
do.
in her head. Don't do that. Also, what if she's not heterosexual?
Yes.
You've now told her that she should be.
Yes, exactly. You're so right. You're so right. Why did you decide to not talk about dating at all in your work?
Because everything else I ever saw created for single women talked only about dating. Every single book, podcast, television show, movie, song on the radio, everything showed single women, you should be looking for him. Everything. And I wanted one place where we don't have to talk about that. We don't have to talk about nonsense dating advice that is never true, never real, only ever painful, and suggesting that we are flawed, that we are broken, that we have to change if we're ever going to find someone, which is the biggest lie. Because you have to be authentically yourself to attract the right people for you. Because if a lie is what attracted someone to you, you have to lie forever.
You explain in your book the last dating advice you followed, and it's actually a little bit of a funny story, I think. Can you tell us?
Sure. I remember it to this day. I was talking to some guy on a dating app, and he actually, I think I was like a little bit interested in him actually. And I have a friend who is a matchmaker, and I didn't ask for this advice, but I think I had recently like expressed some loneliness and frustration to her. Like, why is this taking so long? I don't understand. Like, why is it so hard just to find one human being? And I told her about this guy, and we were texting, and he would text a lot during the day while I was at work. And she said, no, you have to tell him you're not texting during work, and he has to call you in the evening and make plans to see you, or you do not talk to him at all. So I did this. I said, okay, listen, I'm at work. If you want to call me tonight, we can make plans to see each other. And he said, okay. And he called later that night, and it was like he had never been on the phone before. He didn't know how to like speak. It was so awkward. I looked at my phone. The call lasted 1 minute and 45 seconds, and that was long enough. It was horrible, and I never heard from him again. We made plans to see each other on the phone, and then I followed up to confirm the plans, and he never texted back. I never saw him again. But good. Thank you for making it fast for me.
It's true. What do you think happened? That he was uncomfortable with the phone, or
no? I think he was uncomfortable with effort.
Interesting. Yeah. How do you think all this dating advice? How is it hurtful? Because it makes us believe that we are flawed somehow. Yeah.
I think dating advice is harmful because it never has to answer for itself. It never has to be correct. No one ever follows up on dating advice and says, hey, I did what you told me to do. It didn't work. It's consequenceless. There is no risk for the person who is giving the advice, and there is every risk for the person who is taking it, because they're the person who has to live through doing whatever this person said. No one is a fortune teller. No one can tell you your future. And these nonsense moments of dating advice just suggest to me that we have to change our natural behavior, that we have to change our authenticity if we ever want to find love.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Especially when you see how many, I'm sorry to my coupled very nice friends, but how many weird people are in relationships? Like, seriously, how many people that didn't do the work, that didn't go to therapy, that are not like mature emotionally even. So don't make us believe that we have to, the thing, of course it's good to work on yourself and go to therapy, but not to find a guy, you know.
I love that there are so many weird and flawed and quirky people married.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes, it's true. You're right. It's amazing, actually.
It makes me happy. It means there really is there's more than one someone for everyone, but there is someone for everyone. And they, not only that, they find each other. They find each other and they fall in love because of who they are, because of who the other person is. And it wasn't that there was something wrong with you and broken with you and you had to fix it so that that person could love you. That person saw you as you were and loved you anyway. And that is, for me, what makes a relationship worth having.
What's interesting also is like you're explaining in your work about how like the current hookup culture and dating culture is pushing us to, especially to young women in their 20s, to suppress your feelings and your emotions. How do you call this thing you put on a dog so it cannot bite people?
Muzzle.
To me, in French, I call it like the cool girl muzzle. It's like you have to pretend everything is chill, and then you can laugh about even the worst humiliations, and you still stay beautiful and lighthearted. And I remember to me in like the damage of harm it did to me in my 20s to basically lie about being a human being. And it's so toxic.
Being chill forever.
Yeah, you can't be chill forever. Yeah.
It serves men. It doesn't serve women. And of course, this is a very heterosexual scenario, but it serves men who do not, I think, to call men not emotional feels weird to me and wrong and inaccurate. But whatever you feel, whenever you feel it, that is correct. But we've been taught to quiet all of our natural, authentic emotions because as soon as we show them, he'll disappear.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If your natural, authentic emotions scare him away, good. Leave. You don't want that person around you anyway, so we just keep lying and lying and lying to them and to ourselves for what? What's the end goal? So you can have a relationship with somebody who is afraid of you, who is afraid of your natural feelings, afraid of who you are. I don't see how that solves any sort of singlehood problem. First of all, singlehood is not a problem. But to constantly change yourself just to attract someone to you, that's exhausting, and you will exhaust yourself. And if you start a relationship with them, you will be frustrated and angry, and it will end, and it will end poorly.
But it's totally true. I fully agree. But I think that as adults, we also need to learn how to express those emotions without, in a first scenario, hiding everything and pretending everything is chill. Or I see sometimes people go full on the other way of the spectrum, being like, this is who I am and take it or leave it. And which is, to me, as crazy as the first scenario, like communicating and expressing your emotions. It's a delicate dance, actually.
Very much so. Very much so. But we have to be adults and learn how.
Yeah.
You know?
What I love in your work also, then I stop being like a fan, but you explain that the way we grow up, it's like we go to high school and we get grades, and then we get the baccalaureate for us. I don't know what it is for you. And then you go to college, and then you graduate, and then you get a job, and all these markers, yeah, they make you an adult. And we've been told that then being married and having a house or having children were the next markers, when we shouldn't really look at relationship this way. Like finding friends or being in love are like gifts from life, and they're not markers.
We were raised to chase markers.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to do that anymore. After you have graduated from high school or college or whatever you want to do, and you have a job and you are an independent person and you're taking care of yourself, that's it. No more markers. You don't have to wait for the next life milestone to feel accomplished. You living your life authentically every day, that is an accomplishment. That is worth celebrating. You don't have to chase the next big thing just to get other people to celebrate you, because we celebrate what we know. And if you've never seen a single woman on her own celebrated, you don't know that that's possible. Like, I turned 40 yesterday. And I celebrated myself the way I wanted to celebrate. You can do that. You don't have to make it make sense to other people. You don't have to make it make sense to your family, which is the hard one. But when you let go of the need for this constant approval of others at regular intervals, when you let it go, you become so free to live how you want to, and that will always feel better than living to make other people happy or make other people proud.
Does your family put pressure on you?
No, not at all. I think I also should say I'm in kind of a unique situation because my mother was married and divorced many times when I was a child. And so she has a different view of, I mean, I know she would love it if I was married. I know that would be her strong preference because I think parents worry about their children being alone. And she sees my singlehood as alone, even though I don't. But she's never pressured me to get married. She has never pressured me to have children. And I'm not going to have children. I'm child-free by choice. And she has been the biggest supporter of that decision for me. So there's very little family pressure on my part. But I know for many, many people, there is so much pressure from family. And it's very hard to overcome that. And it's very hard to speak against that. It's hard to say to your family, I am happy. I am secure. Everything is fine. And I'm single. That's very hard to say, not because it's hard to get the words to come out of your mouth, but it's hard because you know your family won't believe you.
Yeah.
And you have to defend your happiness, and that's what feels terrible. So I hope that through work like mine, through the book, like I wish single women would take my book and hand it to their family and say, read this, because you might understand more that a single woman never has to defend her happiness to anyone.
Yeah, people always suspect that you're lying or lying to yourself, saying like, you say you're happy, but deep down you're not. And as if life was a constant happiness or always the same feeling all the time, as if life was not up and down, whether you're in a relationship or not. It was, you know, many things can upset you outside of a relationship, like your work, your family, whatever. Like, I think there is something very limiting about the pursuit of only happiness, as if you can achieve happiness one day and then you stay happy forever. I think it's more interesting to pursue meaning.
I agree with you. And I also think it's dismissive. To tell a single woman you're lying to yourself is so dismissive of how she feels. It is dismissive of her knowledge, and it's dismissive of her past, her personal history. You're telling her that she doesn't know her own life. And how dare you?
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
Gaslighting.
Of course, but
yeah,
what
I think
isn't?
girl women are gaslighted all the time.
Constantly, but
Constantly.
Stop caring. Try to practice.
You're right.
Stop caring about what other people think about you. You set yourself free. And I'm not saying it's easy. We've been raised to care what other people think. But with practice and time, it is possible. It is very, very possible to not care what people think. When you're, a very easy way to practice, when you're walking down the street, and maybe French women don't have this problem. I know American women definitely have this problem. It's a worry in your head that always something is wrong. Like you need to fix your hair or fix your face or fix your clothes or fix your bag, something. It's always wrong. And it's like anxiety, like I don't look good enough, or I don't speak well enough, or I'm not successful enough, or I'm not, I haven't been to enough therapy, I haven't done whatever. You're not always doing something wrong. You can just exist and be, and nothing is wrong, and that's okay. And it's hard for single women to learn this, but it's worth trying to learn this.
It's wonderful. I leave you for a tiny little break and you can reflect on what Shani just said. See you very soon. Thanks for being with us. This is On peut plus rien dire, and we are lucky enough to be with the writer and podcaster Shani Silver, who agreed to give us this interview during her holidays. You said earlier, Shani, that you were child-free by choice. Did you always know that you didn't want to have children?
I think I did. I should have known. Because I was always very afraid of being old enough that it was time. That it was time to have a baby. I was always so scared because I felt like the time when it came to have a baby, when my age was right to have a baby, I felt like I had just become in charge of my own life. I had just gotten like a job that I wanted and an apartment that I loved, and life felt good, and like I was in charge of my own life for the first time. And then all of a sudden, that's when I'm supposed to have a baby and give my life to someone else? No. Sorry. I was terrified of having to completely belong to a child, to have that child be responsible for all of my decisions, because they are everything. From what time do you wake up in the morning? Yeah. Like, do you know how many of my mother friends who I have so many friends who are mothers, and it's beautiful, and I'm an auntie and I love it. They can't finish a cup of coffee while it's still hot. It's impossible. It is I got a text yesterday from a woman who was like, she was up very early in the U.S. to text me happy birthday here in Paris. Yeah. And I was like, wow, you must be up so early with the baby. And she said, no, I have to get up before he does or I can't finish my coffee.
Oh, yeah.
It's changing everything about your life. And I was always so afraid that my life would end and then belong to a child. And one day I realized I don't ever have to do that. You don't have to have a baby. You don't have to be a parent. And again, I was just free. I was letting go of so many worries and so many fears and so many maybe presumed burdens in my head that I was going to have when it became time to become a mother. And now the time is never, and I'm so happy.
In your book, you also give concrete examples on how to react in certain situations. One of them is how to reply when someone tells you, how are you still single, or why are you still single? What would you answer today to that question?
I wouldn't answer that question. I would not answer at all. I want that question to die. And I think when we stop answering it, it starts to die. The only reason that anyone is still single when they don't want to be is that they haven't met their partner. That's the only reason. There is no flaw or quirk about you. There is no behavior that you have done that has caused your singlehood. You simply haven't met your partner, and for whatever reason, we can't know this. We cannot know the reason. And every time a single woman answers, "Why are you single? How are you still single?" they feed into the same old negative narratives about singlehood. And they take on so much blame and so much shame. Because have you noticed that all dating advice and all questions about dating place the blame on the single woman? It's very rarely ever placed on the single man.
Never.
So why are we still participating? Don't answer this question.
Yeah, it's thanks to your work that I learned that sometimes you can just say, I don't want to talk like... I was a few weeks ago, I'm going to give a concrete example with childhood friends and stuff. I'm okay with my close friends ask me how love life is going. I'm happy to talk about them with intimate friends, with people I trust. But so I was with this good friend I know forever, since we are 3. And her mother, that I know very well also, she screams in the middle of a lunch table. It's like, hey, Judith, how come you don't bring someone again? How come you're not with someone? And I was very proud of myself to just answer very calmly, I'd rather discuss these things with my intimate friends. And I felt so strong, because I was not like, sorry. And she was like, oh, yes, you're right. It's an intimate topic. And I was like, yeah, that's all. I mean, it's my private life, and we are grown-ass women. You don't deserve full access. Oh, sorry, I'm ranting, but I'm so angry about this right people think they have, that our private life are somehow, as you say, entertainment, which we never do with people in relationships. You would never scream at someone in the middle of a lunch table, hey, do you still fuck or do you still have sex? You would never do that.
No, because couplehood is considered sacred and private. But a single person's life is an open book. We have to close that book. Because there's a phrase in the U.S.
Yeah, you're right. We have to close that book.
Yes. In the U.S., we say what happens behind closed doors is not our business. But single people's doors close too. We deserve just as much privacy and just as much respect as people in couples. There is nothing about deciding to have sex with the same person forever that makes you more worthy of respect than me.
And also in your book, you develop a chapter about very concrete advice. One of them is start a saving account. It's interesting because in France, it's more difficult for us to talk about money than for you, but it's changing. Like, if you're interested in that, I recommend for our listeners the newsletter Plan Cash about money and feminism, to put it broadly. Why is it important to start a saving account?
I think
for obvious reasons, but it's interesting.
Sure. I think the reason I suggest that single women start a savings account is because it has to do with fear and security. Because we have a lot of fear that if something bad happens to us, we're on our own, we can't take care of it, things like that. So having a savings account lets you take care of big things when big things come up without fear, because you know you can. And it's not about, skipping coffee in the morning and thinking that that's saving money. That's not saving money. Saving money is diverting money from your paycheck directly into a savings account, and you see it grow over time, and you feel better over time. Like, okay, this is happening. Yeah. I have a safety net, is what we call it.
Yes, and there is a saying, like, I think it's very popular in the US, not as popular in France, because we have more. We are more supported by the state, but it's changing. So I think we need to adjust also that you need to have 3 months salary. You have to try to build as long as it can take if you earn very little money, but 3 months salary as a saving. And it gives you a feeling, it's true, of security and freedom, that people cannot walk all over you no matter what. If something very bad happens, you can take care of yourself. You can leave your job, or you can leave your husband or boyfriend. And it's not about becoming rich, but I think the feeling of confidence it gives is very important.
I agree. It's very necessary to feel like you can take care of yourself, because then you stop feeling like you need someone else for that reason. Because I don't think money should be a motivator to be in a relationship.
And it is sometimes, because life is hard and very expensive. And how many people stay in crappy relationship because they feel they can't afford living on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much better living in a tiny place that is safe than in a huge place that is your boyfriend's.
I agree. I completely agree.
And what it's really interesting also is, like, you speak about very taboo subjects such as old age and growing old by yourself, and saying you have to think about that and even plan that, because no man is going to stop you from aging.
It's not just because you plan for old age or plan for the end of your life, that doesn't mean that it makes it come true.
It's true.
You can take care of yourself and plan for a secure future. And when you meet someone, you change the plans. It's okay. It's okay. Like, thinking about it or taking action to protect yourself doesn't make it come true. It's superstitious, and it's not, again, it's like we cannot predict the future, but you can make yourself feel better in the present by putting things in place to care for yourself.
Mm-hmm. You also say that a good thing to do is to develop a community. How do you say how to make new friends?
That is one of the most popular questions that I get. And my answer is you have to try. Friends do not just show up in your living room. Neither does a romantic partner, by the way. They don't just show up. You have to try. You have to put effort into making friends. And I mean, there are a million ways you can do it. You can take classes. You can pursue hobbies. You can, join a running group that's training for a marathon. You can go to the dog park. That's a great one. But I hope it's comforting to hear that the effort you put into making friends is more often rewarded than the effort you put into finding a romantic partner. It is easier to find friends than it is to find a romantic partner, thank goodness.
What are the most popular questions you've asked on your podcast?
Oh my goodness. All of them center around, how do I answer this question? Or what do I do in this scenario? Or how do I do this when this happens? And the answer is always somewhat similar, because all of these questions come from caring about what other people think, being ashamed of something that is not wrong.
Can you give us just a little example?
Yeah, like, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of a recent one. A lot of questions come in about behavior around weddings or behavior around responsibility or obligation that people in couples place on single people. Like at work, if you're asked to work late or work extra so that people in families don't have to, they want to know how to answer these things or what to say in that scenario. And it's always going to be like, you're allowed to put yourself first. You are allowed to understand that you matter just as much as everyone else. You don't matter less. You are not smaller. You are not worth less than someone else. And just sort of acknowledging that you are just as valid and just as worthy of respect as everyone else helps build the confidence to not allow people to make you feel bad.
How do you deal with comparison anxiety?
Comparison is a huge one. Comparison is also a choice. You choose when you're scrolling through social media and seeing everyone's pictures of their romantic partners, their vacations, their weddings, engagements, whatever. You're choosing to look at what someone else has. You're choosing to look at something that's not happening to you and let it say something about what you are. Someone else's marriage is not happening to you. It has nothing to do with you at all. You're choosing to look at what they have and let it say something about what you don't have. And it devalues what you are and what you have when you look at someone else and compare. It's such a waste of time. Again, we've been encouraged to do this. We've been raised to do this. But you don't have to continue. You can stop choosing to compare yourself to other people. First of all, it's exhausting. It's a waste of time. And imagine everything you could do if you were able to free yourself from the pain and the sadness and the loneliness involved in constantly comparing yourself to other people.
What I find really interesting in your work also is like you're really not bitter, and you explain that we can decide to look at other people's happiness not as a reminder of what we don't have, but as a reminder of what's possible. And I think it's a very powerful way of thinking.
That's one of my favorite ways of thinking because...
sometimes it's hard, to be honest. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, of course.
Go ahead.
Of course. You're right. It is very hard. It is very hard and it takes practice. But modern dating culture has encouraged us to believe that there is only one way to find someone, and that's on a dating app. There is only... one way to participate in dating, and that is through all of the nonsense dating advice that we're fed. And so much more is possible than we have been led to believe. And the more you can look at things happening to other people as reminders of what's possible, rather than just as reasons to be jealous, see things as reminders that anything is possible, that people come together in every way possible. People meet their partners in any way possible. You're allowed to look at someone else's happiness, and instead of comparing and instead of feeling bad about yourself, you can use it as a reminder that love happens all the time.
You write in your book, "Fuck dying alone. How do we want to live?" Tell us.
There is so much worry about, I don't want to die alone. What if I die alone? I don't want to die alone. So people are pursuing these relationships. What? Just so in the last moment of your life, you can have someone there. The only way to not die alone is to die first. That's it. That's it.
Yes, it's true.
It's also nothing to be afraid of. You're like, I'm not scared at all. To live your life in pursuit of the last moment of your life? No. Like, you have so much living to do before that. Why do you want to live your life in service of the last second of it? It doesn't make sense to me, but it's something that everyone's brain latches onto because that's what we've been fed over and over and over again. You don't want to die alone. You have to do this. You have to make this relationship work because you don't want to die alone. I think what that speaks to more than anything is just breeding more fear around being alone, as if alone is a bad thing. And we never allow ourselves the possibility of alone being good. And alone is fantastic. And we don't ever pursue different perspectives to be able to see how good alone can be. And learning to value being alone is so useful because you won't be alone forever. I believe if you want a partner, eventually we will all find them. Again, it's not that rare. This happens all the time. We're not asking for a yacht in Capri. We're asking for a romantic partner. Come on. But it's important to love your alone time and learn how to love your alone time for multiple reasons. First of all, you don't want to run away from it. You don't want a relationship to escape being single. And then also, if the relationship is bad in the future, if you need to leave for whatever reason, you don't want to be afraid to go back to singlehood. It's so much more comforting to know that you loved it, so you can go back there safely if you need to someday.
Yes, you don't have to despise yourself while single to fall in love.
Exactly.
So fuck die alone, how do we want to live? I think those are the perfect words of the end. Thank you so much, Shani, for being with us today. Thank you for interrupting your holidays. Please, 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 dear friends, go subscribe to Shani's Patreon if you understand English. Even if you're in a relationship, you're going to have so many things to learn from her. Thank you very much to our producer Charlotte Baix and our sound engineers Elisa Grenet and Paul Berthiaud. On peut plus rien dire is a weekly podcast from Binge Audio. Usually it's in French, so go learn French.
On peut plus rien